So season 1 of Disenchantment, it's got lukewarm response from critics. I think part of that is the pedigree with Futurama and The Simpsons. If you're going in expecting some kind of comedic game changer, paradigm shifter, it's not that, but I think it does a lot of things well. The world building, so you have the central trio of characters, the rebel princess, the demon cat, and the optimistic elf, and they're really strong. I think they're stronger together as a trio than when they're apart, but they're strong as a trio. But then it reminds you a bit of BoJack Horseman, where you have all these different characters within the world, and none of them are fleshed out too much. Some of them only get a line or two or a few seconds to kind of be drawn in the most stereotypical way possible, but nonetheless, they're memorable, and pretty soon you get a world filled with all these different memorable characters, and some of the side characters, the king was great, his wife, of ambiguous species origin, she has this interesting accent, kind of French. She gets called a salamander a lot. At one point, you see her swimming like some kind of creature. I don't know what it is, but she was great. The king's second in command, who's one of those power hungry people who's completely servile, doesn't want to intimidate the king by standing up to his full height. So constantly is like bending over, is always hovering over the king's shoulder, and you think it's going to be just kind of a one note character, but then you find out he's got this interest in the occult. He has a third eye. Not that he's interested in the occult, but he has a literal third eye. He has this interesting relationship that starts to form with the king's wizard, who you find out is just someone who has a dunce cap and painted some stars on it. So all these characters and all this background work they did, again, BoJack Horseman's like the gold standard for this, where just so much going on in the background. They call it sight gags. Here we see a ton of different fun signs, but also other stuff. The Plague Patrol, who we constantly see because Middle Ages with the plague. So just little things like that. The horses to mimic police sirens with the red flashing. They put little candles on the horses' foreheads. So just a bunch of little stuff like that made you really feel like this world was lived in, and it gets you excited for season 2. And once season 2 hits, you will feel a bit of nostalgia, like, oh, I remember this world. And in that way, I think that made up for some of the other weaker aspects of the show. The show makes fun of so many things. It skewers aristocratic self-importance, making kings that seem like they won battles that they probably took no part in. Royal interbreeding and marriages to be just alliances rather than anything to do with any kind of true love. I love the wedding cake rather than it being the bride and groom. It's just the two kings of these kingdoms embracing at the top of the wedding cake. It makes fun of religion, politics, middle age or dark age, barbarism and bloodthirstiness and harshness and bleakness, just poverty. They give a kid, they don't have anything, so they give their child like a wooden ice cream cone. The kid's supposed to just lick the, I won't say that. It's supposed to just lick the wooden ice cream cone. Sorry, I got flustered by the potential poor choice of words. So it makes fun of everything. Oftentimes it makes fun of both sides of the issue. So I think that might bother some people, that maybe some people might say for it to be a really effective satire, it has to pick one target, just really nail that target rather than just kind of make fun of everything. But I didn't mind it, and I really like they took a little shot at audiences who, even when you're watching things that are complete fantasy, you'll get really hung up on the show obeying a certain kind of logic and a certain kind of internal consistency. So that the elves say, oh, we can't disappear if the drawbridge is up, that defies the laws of physics. And it's funny because audiences, even when you're talking about fantasy, magic, time travel, things that don't exist and are all hypothetical, you really want it to follow some kind of internal logic. So just an interesting thing about audiences and what we expect of TV. Now the humor, lots of different types of humor. There's the wordplay, the puns. They examine some turns of phrases that people commonly use that don't make a lot of sense. So when you say, I don't like the sound of that, it's kind of funny because most of the time it's not the sound of it, it's the underlying idea. So even if someone rephrased so it sounded completely different, you'd still, as long as the underlying idea is horrible, you're not going to like it any better. Not my first rodeo. Again, it's such an obscure thing. Most of us are never going to have any rodeo, so why we use that as the kind of gold standard for, well, we've done something a lot of times. We pick this rather obscure activity. So there's different stuff like that. There's the shock humor where at one point a guy gets thrown to the pigs, and these pigs just maul him, and then they do the Lady and the Tramp with the guy's intestines. So that kind of boundary pushing raunch humor. They lampshade the animation. I'm sure it's stylistic, but someone say poor animation. They reference the character's buck teeth 3 or 4 times. That's kind of a running joke. There's another funny running joke about the demon being a cat. At first I thought, again, it's just going to be this throwaway line that's quite funny in one episode, but they kept going to it time and time again. Probably the majority of the episodes had some kind of reference to it, so it's some nice running gags. They could have done a better job with serialization. So there was a thread early on about the demon, and there were the demon kind of handlers or masters. They remind you a bit of, if you remember the old Hercules movie, there were the three fates. Remember, the thread won't cut. There's that great scene. But I didn't really understand who they were, why they sent the demon to take this princess under his spell, and they kind of moved away from that. And I feel like there weren't a lot of good through lines uniting the whole season. There was kind of this interesting thing they threw in at the end to kind of get you excited for season 2 and where it's going to go, but I feel like it could have done, there were some great standalone episodes, and like I say, great world building, great characters, but the plotting, I think, from episode to episode wasn't always the best. Now, just going back to the humor for a second, 2 more things I want to mention that are just sticking out in my mind. One, just this absurd non sequitur humor. A guy's in a barrel of his own water, and he's selling me water in this horrible twist on a lemonade stand. And then, this isn't intentional, but I was watching with subtitles, and someone's choking a chicken, not the metaphor, like they're actually choking a chicken, and the subtitle said, chicken clucks, then wheezes. And just very thorough, if you're watching that you really need to know, not just that the chicken clucked, not just the chicken clucked, then wheezes. So I don't know if that was intentional. That was quite funny. Now, going back to the criticism and why this was a good show, I don't know if it was a special show. So in about episode 8, they start talking about immortality. And it was interesting because you had this thread or theme of the king who can't let go of his kingdom, can't pass on the crown to anybody. So any kids he has, subconsciously, he kind of keeps them as kids and doesn't really let them grow into adults. And the HBO show Succession, brilliant show, just finished up. I didn't get to review it, but it was a great show. Really explored how someone who's in charge of this empire and doesn't know how to let go and is obsessed with immortality and just being around and being in power forever, doesn't really let their kids develop, and then the kids can be maladjusted like we see in the show here. So I thought they were going to kind of have a kind of mature exploration, but they didn't really do that, and the direction they took, it was more silly. We had a queen fight at the end. That's how they chose to end it. So, which is fine. Not every show has to be deep and explore, but just I think the bar has been a bit raised. Rick and Morty, just the scope and all the different ideas they explore. BoJack Horseman, just the maturity of it. So I think that those 2 shows, you could say there's something special there, and I'd say must watch. This one is a very good show, and I liked it a lot. I don't think I'd say it's much must watch though. Some things I learned. Portcullis, that's the part of the drawbridge that I guess isn't the drawbridge, it's the spikes that come down. Prehensile tail, I hope I'm saying that right. That's the tail that grabs things. I didn't know there was a word for that. I like the Executioner storyline. So first of all, the mask that we see the Executioner wear. I'm always curious, one, was it a real thing, or is that just something looking back that artists and creators have kind of said but that never really existed, like the Iron Maiden, which we see in this. It turns out that never really existed. That's just something people came up with. But it's interesting, like we have executions now, and people watch them, and people see who's involved with the execution, but I guess is it because the person who actually pushes the button, they're now kind of the executioner, and are they kind of hidden, or do people see who it is and they don't fear repercussions? I don't know where I went with that thread. Anyways, some references I really liked. Little Caesars, poison store instead of Little Caesars. I thought that was quite funny. The Princess Tiabeanie, I'm saying it now, if anyone can help me, is that a reference? Because I feel like it is, and I feel like it's really obvious, and I'm just not picking up on it, or is that just a funny Tiabeanie? I don't know. That's the princess's last name, or maybe it's her nickname. I don't know. If anyone can help me out with that, because I feel like I'm missing a reference there. And then another joke, there's a big thing of earwax, and it says 1 gross on the tub. Is that just 'cause earwax is gross? I'm gonna stop. There's more I want to ask, but I'm afraid all these are very obvious, and it's gonna get embarrassing. So I'm just gonna stop it.